I will tell you that much like with a virus, if you've come into contact with someone who does this, you are more likely to do it to someone else. Okay, so I am going to give us an example of this othering thing, right? A personal example. So a couple of months ago, I had a very strange experience in which I was talking to a friend about the appallingness of the Israeli-Palestinian situation. And I made a point about a socio-historic fact, which is kind of relevant to this situation, amongst all the others. And I saw this look pass over their face. Now, I'm fairly up-to-date and informed about the issue. I'd go so far as to say I've given it a little bit of critical thought. Anyhow, I made this point, a fact, I should say, not an entirely provocative fact, by the way, just a puzzle piece in the history that's maybe a little under-discussed. And at that point, when that strange look passed over this person's face, they then made some crack about my conservative stance on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So I said, oh, hold on, no. I think you may have misunderstood the point I was making. And I started to clarify my point, simply about the fact. And they started nodding their head, kind of smugly. They hadn't taken in one word of what I said. And then they explained to me why I was completely wrong, right? So I said, no, there really wasn't a right and wrong to the point I was making. I was simply pointing out the mutual impact of this point in history. But the more that I spoke, the more they smirked. And what the smirk kind of communicated to me was they knew exactly what I was saying, and it was radically conservative. Okay. I was a little bit unsettled by this, right? Because how did we go from having a natural conversation to this becoming a little mini interpersonal war in itself in about 3 minutes? But this is not where my story ends. So literally, just a couple hours later, I was talking to someone else, and I was recounting this bizarre exchange that we had had, and I was making the point that I was only talking about this socio-historic fact, and I recounted the fact again. And this time, wait for it, they accused me of my liberal stance on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Now, at this point, I was dizzy, because it was as though both people had disregarded everything I was saying and went straight to the stance that they wanted me to be holding so that they could argue with me. Utterly fascinating. So I got home that day and I said to my husband, okay, well, I am perplexed because I did not realize that apparently I have become radically liberal and radically right-wing conservative all at once, and apparently it's really upsetting everybody I meet. Now, this is my point. This is the virus, you guys, and we know it's there because when you're involved in these conversations, you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. And it involves this sort of rapid interpersonal exchange in which you are not seen or heard, and the other person is looking to argue, and you are pushed into a box that has this kind of label on it, and at that point, you are gleefully dismissed. You're othered, right? And nothing you say from this point on is valid anymore, okay? Now, you'll know you're being othered because they enjoy it just a little bit, right? Now, maybe this has happened to you, or maybe you have done this to someone else. I will tell you that much like with a virus, if you've come into contact with someone who does this, you are more likely to do it to someone else. Why? Because it feels horrible, and because the dysregulation of it is contagious, because you start to want to fight. You want to argue back. You want to say, no, that's not fair. That's not what I'm saying. How dare you? You're not characterizing my point correctly. You're misrepresenting me, right? And you'll have some pretty strong feelings about that. And at that point, that's when you're infected. Now, at any point in history, has informing someone that they are wrong and demanding that they agree with you that they are wrong, while not listening to a word that they are saying, ever resulted in someone going, ah, yes, I see. I was hopelessly deluded. Thank you so much for pointing that out to me. No, that doesn't work, does it? Okay, so your job is to figure out where this is happening in your relationships, particularly your closer ones. I have met many people that are flabbergasted that their loved ones do not agree with them, and they have not necessarily considered, how are they experiencing me when I talk about my views? You know, are you listening as well as talking? Or are you telling people that their views are crazy? Are you laughing, scoffing, smirking, sneering, right, when someone disagrees with you? Do you spend hours on social networking composing lengthy and hostile responses to people who you might just as easily ignore. Okay? Do you say words that are technically correct, but that don't match up with your demeanor, right? I guess we'll just have to agree to disagree can be laden with contempt. Is your moral high ground alienating the people around you? And if so, how do you expect it's going to end? Now, alternatively, maybe you're being othered. And you'll know this because you might feel maybe a little afraid of offering your alternative view, worried that everyday discussions are going to kick off into high drama. You may feel like because you don't know as much about a topic that you're not allowed an opinion. And the big one that I am seeing, as I've already pointed out, is that no matter how hard you try to articulate your point, you're still going to be assigned to that group or viewpoint that they want to assign you to, and that doesn't maybe feel correct to you. And what they're effectively kind of saying is, it really doesn't matter what you say, this is who you are. And so now I have to argue with you. Okay. And here is your takeaway for this segment. If you are working on maintaining a relationship with someone that you care about, but who holds a strong opinion that is different to yours, and it's going back and forth, and it's going nowhere good, and nothing changes, you have to shift your attention away from the intractable conflict. Anything that dysregulates you and remains unproductive needs to stop. Okay? So that's your first job. Now, next time, let's talk about the communication that, while might not change someone's opinion, may still keep a connection that's respectful and that can preserve the relationship for when people are all recovered from the virus.